This week we learned in Tanya the famous parak in Haggaras HaKodesh Skilcha Bina. In Josh Gordon's Tanya share of Thursday, he shared the following that he heard from his brother, who heard from Rabbi Greenglass, that suffering is mentioned 3 times in the Tanya. In the first section, it's mentioned where it speaks about someone who suffers. It's a suffering of love, because it's speaking about a Beinoni, and a Beinoni doesn't do any averos, so he certainly isn't suffering as a cleansing process for his sins, because he hasn't sinned. So what is the suffering? It's the suffering of love. In Haggaras Teshuvah, it speaks about suffering, and there it's referring to a Baal Tshuva, a person who has sinned and now is doing tshuva, so he's experiencing some suffering in this world as a cleanse for his sins, so he doesn't have to experience them in the afterlife. Rather, he's purging his sins through his suffering. And in this parak, he speaks about suffering, and he says a person who's suffering, it is only because he is not aligning his will with God's will, and he is only worried about his own personal bodily needs, and therefore he experiences suffering, and there's no room for that, he says. So Rabbi said this level of suffering we're talking about at tzaddik, where he should never see himself as suffering, because all that's happening comes from Hashem, and Hashem is only good, and there can't be any suffering coming from on high. It's only good. And so one may think that this level can only be attained by a tzaddik, someone who has completely eradicated his bad. And I think it's important to mention that actually all 3 of these levels are speaking about one person. As we know, that Olam Katan Ze Adam, a person, is a full universe. So anything we speak about and learn about, certainly if it's mentioned in Tanya, which is a Sefer Shel Beinonim, it's a Sefer that's given to the Beinoni, to every person. There's something in here, there's something in here for us as well, even though we may not consider ourselves tzaddikim. We can experience all 3 of these levels, whether it's Beinoni, Baal Tshuva, or tzaddik. Will we be a tzaddik our whole life? Maybe not. Will we be a tzaddik for one moment in our life? Possibly. It's possible, at least for one moment, to experience this level, where we're in such a state of aligning our will with God's will, that no matter what comes our way, we recognize this is part of God's greater plan, and we roll with it. We get into a flow state, where I'm just doing my thing, and no matter what happens, I'm rolling with the punches. So, I'm shopping for my milk, and I open the fridge, and I drop the milk, and it splats all over the floor, and I say, why now? No, not why now, why this. It's just, what do I have to do now? There's spilled milk on the floor. I keep flowing. I call the employee, I tell him I made a mess, whatever, I clean it myself. Life goes on. There's nothing else to do now. This is the will of God, that milk should spill. And the only reason we wouldn't be in this state, in this flow, would be because we have our own wants and our own wills that are bodily, that are physical, that seem to be more important than what's going on, and we say, I don't have time for this, I have something else I want to do, or want to be somewhere else, or need to be somewhere else, and we resist the reality that God is giving us, then yes, we will find ourselves in a place of suffering. But if we can calm down, take a deep breath, and recognize that no matter where we are and what we're doing and what is happening, this is God's will, and we can align ourselves with it. It is possible. And again, will we be that way fully the whole time? I don't know. I don't know if we can do that our whole life at every moment, but it's irrelevant. If I can do it at this moment, that's all that matters. If I can do it right now, that's all that matters. And so these 3 levels, the suffering we may experience as a Baal Tshuva, the suffering we may experience that is just from pure love of God's telling us that He remembers us through this language for whatever reason we don't understand, but that's okay. Or this level of non-suffering because we aligned our will with His will 100%, are all levels that are shaykh to each person to experience at any given time in his life. It's not speaking about three types of people that are different. It's three types of people that exist within us. For more on the topic of aligning my will with His will, I will attach a link to a beautiful talk by Mark H. of Alcoholics Anonymous, who really nails this message home. Yeah, so thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful Shabbos.